tossers have thrown it out the door with their behaviour this week. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should absolutely look at themselves in the mirror and wonder what the have they been doing. They're hissing at us and calling us cheats in the Lord's long room, and they have the gall to say, talk to us about the spirit of cricket. Absolute bullshit.
There's a big appeal that's hit him on the pad. He's out. Lions gone. New South Wales are 9 down onto Sydney Road, and it's hit a car. Oh, I think it's hit a car. What a way to bring up your 50.
All you want is to leave it all behind. Now there is a simple remedy to stay fit for all eternity.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cricket Unfiltered podcast. I am Menas, and boy, the cricket season in Australia has started off in sensational fashion, with two of the prime candidates to open the batting for Australia making centuries, and a third candidate as well making a ton. Thought I'd drop in with an episode because lots to talk about. Andrew McDonald did a long interview with Jared Waitley on SEN, so there's a few things to glean from that interview. And also Marnus Labuschagne spoke to Ian Healy on his show this morning in the wake of his brilliant century. Going to talk about all that, dissect some of that. I've also got a great episode coming up in a few days with John Norman from Talk Sport. We'll be starting an early Ashes preview. I'll be picking his brains for the ins and outs of this English team. Also diving into some of the lingering issues from the 2023 Ashes. So keep an eye out for that one. Should be out Sunday night or Monday morning, talking with John over the next couple of days. But let's get into all the cricket news. Sam Constas, the young tyro, has peeled off a century in a session for Australia A versus India A. He made 109 off 144. Australia A playing India A in a unofficial four-day match in India, first of two games in that series before they play white ball games. But Constas' second century of the summer. Let's have a listen to what Andrew McDonald had to say about it when asked by Jared Waitley.
It's really important. I think any time that you get space and time to work on your game, and then to be able to execute that straight away with century in an intra-squad, albeit an intra-squad city versus country, and then an Australia A contest in foreign conditions, to get that immediate feedback that what you've been working on can work. And it's a connection piece to international level. Clearly that the level will always rise, intra-squad, into Australia A, into Test cricket, and there's always going to be different pressures that come around that. But yeah, to come from the West Indies, to go away, work on your game, that winter investment, to get immediate return, I think gives a lot of confidence. And a lot of our game is about confidence and believing in what you're doing. And
yeah, well said by Andrew McDonald. I mean, that's the thing from Sam Constas. He had a setback in the West Indies, but it hasn't paralysed him. He's come out this summer, already made a couple of hundreds. Obviously, he needs to do it, as Andrew was saying, in the level up at the Sheffield Shield, then against England. But, you know, this is really promising signs that although he was hung out to dry by the selectors, not playing in Sri Lanka, then playing on those terrible pitches in the West Indies, he hasn't let it get him down, and he's back scoring runs. And that's the one thing about Sam Constas. He's a century maker. And you know what? Centuries win test matches, and that's why Australia needs to stick with this guy as long as they can, to hopefully he can translate this form of a brilliant 109 for Australia A and bring this form back to the Shield, and then to partner Usman Khawaja against England, because he still actually is the best option. He's young. He's so much upside. He's aggressive, so he's a good counter to Usman Khawaja. He's a fresh face around the dressing room. He's very marketable. So there's so many great things about Constas, but he needs runs. Also in that Australia A game, Campbell Kellaway made 88. He's another youngster on the rise. He opened the batting with Constas. And Josh Philippe made 123 not out of just 87 balls. Bit of a forgotten man of Australian cricket. He's had a couple of down years, hasn't really been able to make any impression for Australia when given an opportunity, or hasn't really knocked shot the lights out with his performances in domestic cricket, but brings up a century for Australia A, and he could be on the verge of big things. So Australia made 6 for 532. India A in response, 1 for 116. So bang, Sam Constas, 100 to start the season. Then coming back to Sydney at Cricket Central on the same day, New South Wales was playing Tasmania in the first domestic one day of the season. And a famous victory for Tasmania. New South Wales were bowled out for 224. Tasmania at one stage were 8 for 124, but then Matt Kuhneman and Bradley Hope put on an unbeaten 101 not out partnership to get a famous win. Tasmania finishes 8 for 225, and a heartbreaking loss for New South Wales. But Curtis Patterson, he opened the batting for the Blues, made 110 off 125 deliveries. He made 100 in a practice game leading into the summer, a bit like Sam Constas. And he's certainly someone that is in and around the discussions for further test selection. I'm not sure whether he would open the batting. I'm not sure whether the selectors would be keen for him to open the batting in the Ashes, but certainly when a Steve Smith were to retire or a spot were to free up in the middle order, maybe Cameron Green moves down the order and they're looking for a number 3. Curtis Patterson is certainly in the discussions, and he could open the batting. Moses Enriquez was the second top scorer. He made 41. He doesn't have a contract for New South Wales this year, so still hasn't lost the touch though. White ball cricket made a pretty good 41. The rest of the top order failed to get into double figures, so not a good start for the New South Wales top order. Matthew Wade, interestingly, played for Tasmania, and we'll see Glenn Maxwell played for Victoria in their game, which we'll discuss in a moment. A few players, and Moses as well, that don't have contracts but have bobbed up in this competition. Matt Wade, he made 40 off 41 before being dismissed, still in great form. You just can't keep the little general down, can you? He's been off coaching, back out in the middle, back doing it for Tasmania. So that was the first game. Then in the second game, Queensland hosted Victoria at Allan Border Field, and Queensland made 305 for 310. Marnus Labuschagne, 130 off 118 deliveries. This was a fantastic innings. He looked very good, very composed, hitting. What I noticed about Marnus was he was hitting a bit straighter through the onside. So rather than trying to hit a lot of balls square and through mid-wicket, he was trying to hit more balls between mid-wicket and mid-on. And that just means you're getting more of the full face of the bat coming through the ball. And look, I don't know if he's made any technical changes around that, but that's just something I noticed. I noticed a lot he's playing across his pads, and he seemed to be playing better through the line in this innings. So great to see him start the season off with a century. He did make a century in the KFC Max Blast competition in Queensland a week or two ago. But again, an imperious innings for him, lofting straight. He looked in very good touch. He was captaining that Queensland side, and they went on to win by 55 runs against Victoria. And here's what Marnus had to say about his preparations for the summer to Ian Healy and his co-host on SENQ Breakfast.
I just think, you sort of, you have a few low scores and you're probably, I'm probably getting too ingrained in my technique and trying to get that right and getting, probably just away from playing what's in front of me and trusting my instincts. And you sort of get in that, and it sometimes can be, tough to get out of that space as quickly as you hope. And the bit of time, obviously, that I've had between, the West Indies, not playing in the West Indies to now, I've had time to sort of reflect and work out, okay, get my game in a spot where I want. I've played probably 9-10 games. So just having time in the middle, probably valuing a little bit more time in the middle rather than, hitting more balls in the net.
Well, that's interesting. He said valuing more time in the middle rather than hitting balls in the net. So a huge change of approach for Marnus, because he and Steve Smith are known as the two guys that spend the longest in the nets. And, he said publicly that he's been a tinkerer, and that was great insight into his thoughts there, that he's just tried to simplify things, peel things back. And that is why it's so important to drop players when they need to do this, because you need to drop them so they can go back to the level below and rediscover what got them to the top level in the first place. And it is very hard to do that when you're playing for Australia. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just cut a player off like Australia did to Marnus in the West Indies and say, go back and find your best and come back to us when you're ready. And it's happened time and time again for some of the greatest Australian batters. So this is hopefully just a small setback for Marnus on what is a long and fruitful Test career. Another thing of note in this game was I couldn't believe Glenn Maxwell was playing for Victoria, and he peeled off a century in a forlorn effort by Victoria to win the game. But still, a casual Glenn Maxwell century on a Wednesday afternoon. Couldn't believe my luck. Such a treat. He ended up making 107 off 82 deliveries with his 8th 50 over ton overall, and his first ever List A century for Victoria. And what's ironic is this has come after he's retired from 50 over cricket for Australia. So Victoria tweeted out that it was Maxwell's first List A century, but it wasn't his first List A century. I think it was just his first for Victoria, because he's got 8 50 over centuries overall, 4 of them at international level. But you're very, very entertaining 50 over game, 2 entertaining 50 over games to start the summer. The thriller by Tasmania to squeak over the line when New South Wales seemed short of victory. And that was Sean Abbott's first game captaining the Blues in the 50 over format. And I reckon he would have maybe had a few grey hairs after that game, because they had it in the bag, couldn't seal it up, and then pretty convincing win for Queensland. But great viewing. Marnus returning back to his best form with 130, and then Glenn Maxwell with 50, and a rare 50 over outing for Glenn Maxwell. I can only imagine we won't see him play 50 over cricket very often, and I was surprised to see him play. I guess it's to get some form ahead of the India white ball series. There's probably not a lot of other cricket he can play, so looking to play a couple of these domestic 50 over games to get ready. I was very surprised to see him playing. All right, so that's the batting race for the Ashes. An intriguing start. 3 centurions. Marcus Harris, first ball duck for Victoria against Queensland, so not a good day for him yesterday. And actually, Michael Neser, he had figures of 3 for 10 after 9 deliveries in yesterday's game, and he just seems in great form with the new ball. And we'll talk about Cummins' fitness later, but I'm not so worried now about our backup. Neser finished with 3 for 43. He's a great bowler, and if there were to be a couple of injuries, I could see him doing a really good job for Australia at Test level. All right, Andrew McDonald spoke to Gerard Whateley on SEN, and he had quite a bit to say. I guess the first thing he said was, well, have a listen to this.
Yeah, I would like that. I like Smith at 4 and I like Head at 5. I think that's worked, and I think sometimes you don't want to get caught out in trying to cover something else and remove a strength.
So it would appear you can lock that in. Smith at 4, Head at 5, Khawaja to open, and then it's where the other pieces fit. And this does put a stress on the batting order, because then you have this little battle between Webster and Green. If Green is back bowling, then he becomes a genuine all-rounder again. Can you bat him at number 3? Andrew McDonald seemed to indicate that history would suggest that if you've got an all-rounder, batting them too high in the order can put too much stress on them. So he wasn't equivocal about this, but he did seem to sort of give examples of Shane Watson in the past, that you might not want Cameron Green being a long-term number 3 if he's back bowling a lot for Australia, which then puts pressure on Bo Webster's spot. Could you move Green to Webster's spot for the Ashes? Although Webster's done very well, and we'll come to that in a minute. But the other thing that McDonald said to frame all this discussion was that The all-rounder only becomes really important when you get to the 4th and 5th tests of the Ashes, where you've got Melbourne and Sydney back-to-back, and you put a lot of strain on your bowling unit, and that he wasn't too worried about the all-rounder spot for the first 3 tests. And he cited the example of Mitch Marsh last summer, who only bowled a few overs in those first 3 tests and then was dropped eventually for the 5th test when they wanted that extra bowling option. So I don't think the time for the decision may be the first test. If the selectors do want to pick Green and Webster, I think they'll be fine to do that with Green at 3 and Webster at 6, knowing that they're not looking for too much from that 5th bowler. And the good thing is, if you've got Webster and Green, well, you can ask less of Green bowling. Although Green's probably a superior bowler, can get better batters out. Webster's no slouch. So, yeah, you could balance it out a bit. But and Andrew McDonald pointed out that Cameron Green has skipped the T20s in New Zealand to get those bowling loads up, and they're expecting him to be an all-rounder for that first Ashes Test match. Ben Horn wrote an interesting article today in the Daily Telegraph, and here's a quote. And this is if Australia were to drop Webster. Australia would want to be certain a new combination at 2 and 3 was going to deliver more runs than the very respectable 381 at an average of 34.6 that Webster has compiled in his 7 tests so far, where he has saved the top order blushes with 4 half centuries. And I guess the situation Horn's outlining here is, say Marnus comes back into the side and they want to plug him at 3. Maybe they'll go Khawaja, Constas, Marnus, Labuschagne, Smith, Head, and then it becomes Green v Webster. So that is one possibility. And I guess why fewer Bo Webster. You might be a little nervous, although I think he's done fantastically well, Webster, and I wouldn't be looking at moving on from him. But you can't fit everybody into the top 6. So it really is about who can grab the test spots. If Marnus can keep making hundreds, then they will need to really look at bringing him back in at number 3, because he's done it for so long and we need a solid number 3. All right. Now, Andrew McDonald also said to Gerard Whateley that he was surprised Mitchell Starc gave up the T20 format and not maybe another format. But then when he spoke to Mitchell Starc, Starc stressed that Test cricket was the most important thing for him. And with a T20 World Cup at the end of this season, he didn't want to have that looming over his season. He just wanted to focus solely on the Ashes and then, I guess, be free, basically. If he bowls himself into the ground during the Ashes, he doesn't have to worry about the T20 World Cup coming up after that. Now, here's, I guess, the discussion that everybody's having at the water coolers around Australia. How much of the Ashes will Pat Cummins play? Here's what McDonald had to say.
I mean, we're confident that he's going to partake in the Ashes. So I think to sensationalise that he's not would be an overreaction, to use your words. It's not ideal. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's ideal. He's working through a program. There was a routine scan on the back of the West Indies. He does have a lumbar bone stress issue there. So he'll just work through what his return to play looks like. And we've got time. If it happened any closer, then you'd have to be making sort of key decisions around what it all looks like. But we have got time, a lot more information to come. And as I said, we're really, really hopeful that he will take a key part in the Ashes.
A lumbar stress issue. Let me say that again. I'll get it right for clipping it properly on socials. A lumbar stress. I'll say it again. A lumbar stress issue is what Pat Cummins has. And that is concerning. So that is basically a lumbar stress fracture. I'm on Dr. Google and it's saying that a lumbar stress fracture is a small crack in the pars. Basically, I think Pat Cummins has got a very small or minor stress fracture or crack or something, but it is very concerning. And I guess, as McDonald was saying there, we've got time for it to get better. So hopefully he does come good for the Ashes, but it's hard to see him playing all 5 test matches. I don't think we've heard those words before, a lumbar stress issue, from anybody around his back before. So that's not a hot spot, people. That is a stress fracture. So be worried. Be absolutely worried. And then McDonald talked about the depth around the fast bowlers. Obviously, you got Cummins, Stark, Hazelwood, Boland, but then McDonald brought up names like Abbott, Nisa, Doggett, and also younger quicks coming through like Straker and Anderson. But for me, when you get past the big four, Abbott, Nisa, Doggett, and also Joe Richardson was mentioned that he will come back and should be available during the Ashes. He's another match winner. So there are some backups for Australia, not quite of the quality of Pat Cummins, I guess, but that is very concerning. A lumbar stress issue. That is basically a lumbar stress fracture. So, wow. Anyway, keep your eye on that one. We'll get more information in October, and then we'll really know what the situation is for Pat Cummins. You all know what I think. Steve Smith should be given the captaincy now, and this should all be sorted out so we have a completely clear focus heading into the Ashes. But hey, I'm just one podcaster with an opinion. All right. So remember, coming up soon, great episode, John Norman from Talk Sport. I'll be recording with him in the next couple of days. We'll be talking all things Ashes. Remember, you can get great Cricket Unfiltered merchandise. Everyone is going to be wearing these t-shirts at the Ashes. Get on the Cricket Unfiltered merch train. They're really good quality t-shirts, good quality material. And if you want to look great at the cricket this summer, get a Cricket Unfiltered t-shirt. All the information is in the episode notes for that. Thank you to Damien at Exactamundo. He's a great listener of the show, but also runs a great business that supports all types of digital creation. So have a look at all the information in the episode notes to him. We're partnering with Exactamundo on this merchandise. All right. Thanks for tuning into Cricket Unfiltered. I'll be back soon with John Norman, and enjoy all the cricket that's starting in Australia.